Chapter 9. Continued. Lair did not speak. He knew the importance of a child finding his own voice, but Fima's voice, as she sang, had still been her own. Not the child's voice of a few months before, but not Anset's voice either. Still her own, but richer, darker. Not black, however, for as the darkness of her voice had increased with Anset's teaching, the brightness had also grown brighter. No one spoke. They were not prepared, either for Fima's song or for the dilemma Rook had given them. They did not know enough. The strangeness of Fima's song had obviously come from suffering, but Rook's voice did not hint of any suffering she planned to cause them. It was plain enough, even though she spoke instead of singing, that she herself favored, yet feared, the course that she proposed, so they held their silence. "You are not kind," Rook told them. "You are leaving the decision up to me, so that if I decide wrong, it will be entirely my own fault to bear." It was then that Lair stood and spoke, because he could not leave her alone. "I am Fima's teacher," he explained, though everyone knew that already. "I should be envious that her song has been changed by someone else. I should be angry that my work with her has been undone. But I am not, nor would any of you have been. If I came to you and told you that I had a way to double the range of all your children, would you not accept it? If I came to you and told you that I had a way to help your children sing twice as loudly and even softer than they do now, would you not seize the opportunity? You all know that the emotion behind the song is the most important thing. What happened to Fima was the increase of the range of her emotions, not just double but 1,000-fold. It changed her songs. I know better than any of you how much it changed them, and not all the changes are happy ones. But is there anything this child is not prepared to sing? Is there anything this child is not prepared to suffer and endure? I'm aware of the dangers of what Rook proposes, but those dangers are the price, and the price may bring us power that we have never had before." By the end of his speech, Lair was singing, and when his song was done there were many low murmurs of approval, though all of them were tinged with fear. It was enough, though. Rook spread her arms and cried, "Thank you for sharing this with me." Then she sent them to get their children, and bring them to the great hall. Chapter 10. Anset sang to them. At first, they could not understand why they had been brought to hear this old man. They had not coveted the sound of his voice as Fima had. It was harsh to them. His pitch was untrue. His voice was not strong. His songs were crude and unpolished. But after a while, after an hour, they began to understand. And understanding, they began to feel. His crude melodies were just intentions. They began to glimpse the music he meant to sing them. They began to understand the stories his voice told them, and feel with him exactly what he felt. He sang them his life. He sang them from the beginning, his kidnapping, his life in the songhouse, his silence and the agony that finally was broken and healed by Este in their ordeal in the high room. He sang them of Mikal. He sang them songs of his captivity, of his killings, and of the grief at Mikal's death. He sang to them of Richter's Ashen, and he sang to them of his despair when the songhouse would not take him back. He sang to them of Kjaran, who was his friend when he most needed one. He sang to them of governing the earth. As he relived each event, his emotions were nearly those that he had felt at the time, and because he felt that strongly, his audience felt that strongly. For if Anset had lost his voice, he had only gained in power, and he could touch hearts as no other singer could, despite his weaknesses. And when he sang of his love for Joseph and Joseph's death, when he sang of the terrible song that destroyed Richter's mind and killed Ferret, it was more than anyone could bear. Control broke all over the hall. They had been worn down not just by his voice, but also by exhaustion. Anset did not sing quickly, for some songs cannot be sung without time. It was on his 4th day of singing, with his voice often breaking from weariness, and sometimes whispering because he could not make a tone at all, that he brought them to the edge of madness, where he himself had been. For a frightening hour, Lair and Rook had both feared that it had been a mistake, that what Anset was doing could not be endured, that it would be a blow from which the songhouse would never recover. But he went on. He sang the healing of Este's songs. He sang the gentle love of Kjaran and the mayor and their family. He sang of reconciliation with Richter's. He sang of years serving the Empire and loving, finally, everyone he met. And he sang of coming home again. At the end of the 6th day his voice fell silent, and his work was done. It took time for the effects to be felt. At first, all the songs in all the common rooms and chambers were worse. All the children staggered under the weight of what had been given them. But after a few days, some of the children began to incorporate Anset's life into their songs. After a few weeks, to one degree or another, all the children had. And the teachers, too, were colored by the experience, so that a whole new depth sang through the halls of the songhouse. And that year, even the singers who left the songhouse sounded like songbirds to the people they went to serve. And the songbirds were so strong, so beautiful, that people all over the Empire said, "Something has happened to the songhouse." Those who had heard Anset sing when he was still a child in the palace sometimes realized where they had heard such songs before. "They sing like McCall's songbird," they said. "I never thought to hear such things again, but they sing like McCall's songbird." Chapter 11. After Anset sang his life to the children of the songhouse, he felt a great weight leave him. He went with Rook to the high room and tried to explain to her how it felt. "I didn't know that was what I wanted to do, but that was why I came home." "I know," Rook said. He did not bother with control now. She had seen all of him, all of his life, as he revealed it to the deepest places in her, from the stage in the great hall. There were no secrets now. And so he wept out his relief for an hour, and then sat in silence with her for another hour. And then, "What do you want to do now?" Rook asked. "There's no reason for silence now. You're free to live here as you choose. Do whatever you want to do." Anset thought, but not long. "No," he said. "I did everything I came here to do." "Oh," she answered. "But what else is there? Where will you go?" "Nowhere," he said. And then, "Have I done a work?" "Yes," she answered, knowing as she did that she was giving him permission to die. "Have I done a work worthy of this room?" he asked. And again, though no one had ever been granted such a thing before, she said, "Yes." "Now?" he asked. "Yes," she said. And as she left the room, he was opening all the shutters, letting the cold air of late autumn pour in. Only songmasters of the high room had been allowed to choose the time when their work ended, until now. But it would be absurd, Rook thought, to deny the greatest songbird of them all the death granted to others far less worthy of the honor. And as she walked out the door, he spoke to her. "Rook," he said. She turned to face him. "You were the first to love me," he said, "and you're the last." "They all love you," she said, not bothering not to cry. "Perhaps," he said, "I thought I would die and disappear from the universe, Rook. But thanks to you, they're all my children now." He smiled, and she managed to smile back. She ran back into the room, embraced him one more time, as if they were still children, instead of an old man and an old woman who had known each other too well, and yet hardly at all. Then she turned and left him, and closed the door after her. And 3 days later the cold and the hunger had done their job. He was so ready to go that he had never wavered, had never in the last extremity sought the comfort of the blankets. He died naked on the stone, and Rook thought afterward that she had never seen anyone look as comfortable as he did, with rocks pressing into his back, and the wind blowing mercilessly over his body. They delayed the funeral until the Emperor could come, with Ephraim's parents, Kjaran and the mayor, the first to arrive. Kjaran did not weep, though she nearly broke when she confided to Rook privately, "I knew he would die, but I never thought it would be so soon, or without my seeing him again." And breaking precedent again, though broken taboos were becoming quite common in the songhouse, Ephraim, Kjaran, and the mayor attended the funeral, and heard the songs, and they were not resented when they wept uncontrollably at Fima's funeral song. Only Rook went to the burial, however, of all the people in the songhouse, except for the deafs who actually did the work. "It's not a sight much conducive to song," she told Kjarn, as they stood together by the grave, "to watch death carry someone into the ground. The dirt closes over him so finely." And the two women, who were the only ones left who had loved him in his childhood, stood each with an arm around the other's waist, as the deafs tossed dirt into the grave. "He's not dead, you know," said Kjarn. "He'll never be forgotten. They'll always remember him." But Rook knew that memories, however long they are, grow dim, and eventually Ansett would just be a name, lost in the books, to be studied by pedants. Perhaps his stories would survive as folk tales, but again, his name would be linked to a life that was scarcely his anymore. Already the stories of McCall's Songbird were far grander than the real events had been, nobler, and so less painful. Part of Ansett would live, however, not that anyone would know it was Ansett. But as singers and songbirds left too, and went throughout the galaxy, they would take with them what they had learned from the voices of the singers in the songhouse. And now a powerful undercurrent in those voices would be Ansett's life, which he had given them irrevocably, forever theirs, and forever powerful, and forever full of beauty, pain, and hope. The end. It will be entirely my own fault to bear. It was then that Lair stood and spoke, because he could not leave her alone. "I am Fima's teacher," he explained, though everyone knew that already. "I should be envious that her song has been changed by someone else. I should be angry that my work with her has been undone. But I am not, nor would any of you have been. If I came to you and told you that I had a way to—" The strangeness of Fima's song had obviously come from suffering, but Rook's voice did not hint of any suffering she planned to cause them. It was plain enough, even though she spoke instead of singing, that she herself favored, yet feared, the course that she proposed, so they held their silence. "You are not kind," Rook told them. "You are leaving the decision up to me, so that if I decide wrong, to double the range of all your children, would you not accept it? If I came to you and told you that I had a way to help your children sing twice as loudly and even softer than they do now, would you not seize the opportunity? You all know that the emotion behind the song is the most important thing. What happened to Fima was the increase of the range of her emotions, not just double but 1,000-fold. It changed her songs. I know better than any of you how. Chapter 9. Continued. Lair did not speak. He knew the importance of a child finding his own voice, but Fima's voice, as she sang, had still been her own. Not the child's voice of a few months before, but not Ansett's voice either. Still her own, but richer, darker. Not black, however, for as the darkness of her voice had increased with Ansett's teaching, the brightness had also grown brighter. No one spoke. They were not prepared, either for Fima's song or for the dilemma Rook had given them. They did not know enough.